First of all, yes, the APC did not send any representation to the conference at that time, but we had members of APC that attended from states and from different organizations. So there were a lot of APC members that were part of the conference, as members, but not officially from the party itself. And I must say they were part, they knew, the work that's been put into the conference and what the results of this conference were. Of course, there would be a bit of arguments about what was being concluded in certain areas, but I don't see that, the incoming president would decide to just throw the whole process and what we concluded on, at the conference. If there were some differences at that time within the APC and the PDP, that was between them and the party at that time and the governing body. But now, as the president-elect for Nigeria, he has to have a broader mind and view where, we don't keep having these conferences or putting together Nigerians to come up with, solutions and we just get rid of them. I believe he would probably look at what we've done at the conference and be able to pick out certain parts that he agrees with or would agree with his own party manifesto and be able to implement them. I believe there are a lot of things in there that would benefit, the incoming party and Nigeria as a whole in there. So it'd be good for, for the president-elect, to actually go into, what we've done and pick out what he thinks, would fit into what he's doing now, even if, he doesn't agree with it. The party didn't agree with it. But it's no more a matter of PDP and APC now. He's now the president of Nigeria, so he's the president of everybody. And it's what's going to be benefit for everybody that I'm sure he'll be working on, as he says.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the Chibok Gulf. There's so much expectation in Nigeria, outside the country. Many women and children, including men, were rescued recently from Boko Haram camps. But the Chibok girls, when you read the news, you hear, but the Chibok girls are not among those rescued. Now, can you just peep or peer into the minds of the parents, the relatives of those people concerned, and tell us, what do you think will be going on? Losing a child for over a year. I mean, we don't even know whether the child is alive or not. I mean, how do you even begin to cope with that?
Really, I mean, it's something I wouldn't want to imagine because I cannot put myself in the same shoes. But being a mother, it's I'm sure it would be a trauma to not know whether your child is alive or not. There's a difference when your child dies and you see and the child is dead. You come to terms with it. It's not easy to do that, but when you're not sure what's happened to the child, especially to your daughter, it's something that I cannot see. I cannot place my mind and think the way they would be thinking. But it must be something that's very terrible, and I believe they need some. They would need some. They would need to go through some counseling. The parents would need to go through some counseling to be able to cope with it. But I think it's something that's very difficult. There's a difference, when the child dies, the child is dead. But when the child disappears and you're not sure what has happened to a child, it's very traumatic. As I said earlier, we've had, what we're having now. It's, people, we're having other people being, brought in from, and then we've been told that they're not the Chibok girls. So we can just imagine that, that we definitely don't even have a record of the people that have been taken out of this country. We need to be able to have, records of people, Nigerians, and that's part of what was even recommended during the conference, where we have a integrated database where we capture all Nigerians and we know, the number of Nigerians we have, a specific, apart from the census, we need to know the people, and know when people have records of birth, death, those are alive and the rest of them, and the movement of our people. From what we've seen now, I believe the cry that we should have been crying was more not just Chibok girls, but crying for all the women and children that have been taken out, but we don't even know the quantity. I mean, from what we're having, there's so many. We might end up getting 2,000 at the rate as we're going. And it's very sad that we don't even have records. We don't even know. We didn't know that so many people were taken out of this country, during that period of time. So getting an integrated data system of Nigerians and securing our borders, it's very important, which is it was discussed during the conference too. So I believe there's a lot that can be taken out of what was discussed there.
Okay. Now these people have been rescued. What, from your experience, what is the next line of action? What should be the next line of action for the girls who we can't even begin to imagine what they've been through, for the women and even the children? Their eyes will have seen things that no adults should see, really. So how do you begin to, reintegrate them back in society, counsel them? How do you begin to do that?
I think the first thing we need to do, apart from all the medical tests and the rest they're having, the next thing is to be able to cancel them, both the women and the children, and see how we can integrate them into the system. Part of what I believe and I still stand on is that the identity of these people that have been they have been recaptured and brought back into Nigeria should not be given out, or they should change their identity. So it's a lot easy. There's no stigmatization of these girls. They should be able to, integrate with the system without people, knowing. And then that's in different parts of the country. So counseling is the most important thing to get them through, apart from the medical. Trying to get them back integrate into the system. A lot of NGOs are, are working on that, and they're discussing that. The Murtala Mohammed Foundation, they're working on such issues. There are a number of other, NGOs and foundations that are actually working on that. So it's not going to be just government doing it. It needs the NGOs and the civil societies to be able to help. And then there's the group, the coalition of NGOs dealing with displaced people. Those two, they're working towards how they can integrate these people into the system. And since they have them all over Nigeria, I think it's something that, a network should be formed where you train the NGOs, and the NGOs should be able to implement those training. But the best thing is, I honestly don't think their identity should be known, so they can just be able to get back into the system, with no worries.
Somebody said this, that these girls, they've been away for so long, that isn't it even likely that if they're even found, they might not even want to leave their captors. Talking about the Stockholm syndrome, where a kidnapped girl, an abducted girl, began to fall in love essentially with her captor, and then when she was going to be rescued, she didn't want to leave the captor. Is that possible? Do you think that's possible here?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, there were young girls that were taken off them, and then they're at that age of, what do you call it, romance and whatever. So they probably met somebody that was very nice to them, and they had some that were nasty to them, and they had a nice guy that was nice to them and got them out of the trouble, make sure they gave them extra meals and the rest of them, the little extras. It's possible. It's something that would happen because they're that age where there's infatuation, especially, not fall in love, so that could happen, but with that too, they still need counseling. They have to realize that the bad guy was a bad guy. There's no way the bad guy was a good guy.
I think we have to end it there. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, but your foundation, what are your plans? If I can ask.
That's why I told you that most NGOs and civil societies that are coming together, and then we have the coalition of NGOs that deal with displaced persons. My NGO is one of them. So that's why I said. And then, of course, as I told you, the Bring Back Our Girls group too, it's a coalition of some NGOs, and that's why I mentioned the Murtala Mohammed Foundation, which is working on that. There are lots of other NGOs, women groups that are actually working towards, how to integrate this, returnees, I would say, to Nigeria, and see how they can work with them. Another option is, they can actually, apart from staying in Nigeria, I'm just thinking there are other options. You can take them away from Nigeria, where they could, since they were in secondary school and they were writing the exams, so you can easily, after that, they should be taken away. The government should sponsor them out of Nigeria and they can get their training, somewhere else. So by the time they're back, it's not really something that is fresh within the society, and people would have forgotten all about it. I'm saying that because they're all girls, and we don't want anybody pointing fingers at them. Later on in life, we want them to be just like any other normal person.